Hello, it's 2 o'clock in my time zone in the center of the country. This is Greg Stumpf. It's 3 o'clock on the East Coast, 1 o'clock and 12 o'clock, and earlier the further west you go. And welcome to the June VLab Project and Community Owners Meeting. This is the first meeting we've had since the beginning of April. For those of you who do or do not know that I get kind of busy during the spring with the hazardous weather test bed here in Norman. So I kind of take a break from this, and now we're back. And we'll be back on a approximately 2-month cycle again. There'll be a slight hiccup around the holidays to accommodate that. And then once we get around to next year, we'll be accommodating my hazardous weather test bed schedule again. So anyway, you should see on my screen the agenda for today, and we've got quite a bit of information that we're going to be going through since it's been a while. But I'll go ahead and hand it off to Steve Smith, who will provide the welcome. So Steve, you are unmuted and you can go.
Thanks, Greg. Welcome, everyone. As you remember, or maybe if you're new you don't, these meetings that we provide for VLab owners of communities and projects are to provide you high-end users some additional information that we don't share normally with the general broader VLab community, with the idea that you are the real movers and shakers in the VLab and our core audience. You're the ones who are building out communities to do successful collaborations or working on projects, be they prototype projects or sort of skunkworks things, or actual, core development for National Weather Service or other NOAA entities. So these meetings are for you. So we encourage you to be as interactive as possible during the course of this entire agenda. Ask questions using the raise your hand or chat feature anytime you'd like. If we go down tangents that you want to pursue, that's quite all right. That's what this meeting is for. So I want to encourage you to do that. We've got a lot of new stuff that has been rolling out over the last few months into the VLab that we're going to present during this meeting. I want to remind everyone that the VLab Improvement Team is an official sanctioned body which reviews requests for enhancements or bug fixes or whatever for the VLab. There is a place to access the VLab Improvement Team website where you can provide suggestions, and guaranteed those suggestions will be adjudicated by that VLab Improvement Team in due time. And if they prioritize those high, then they will be moved up on our priority list to be implemented. So that's one way to get to be empowered and to provide us with the feedback that we can use to help build the VLab to be more valuable to you core users. I also want to remind everyone of the What's New page, which is accessible from the main landing page of the VLab. I use this personally. You can subscribe to the 3 flavors of the What's New, which are new projects, new communities, and new documents that are uploaded to the VLab. This allows you to have situational awareness on new things. We'll be presenting some of that in a moment, but I find it very useful to subscribe to that so you can see what types of new communities are out there that might interest you and get a better sense of what's going on in the VLab. Lastly, I want to just make a statement that one of the key goals of the VLab is to enhance collaboration across the agency. Collaboration is a very tricky thing to sort of pin down, and people approach it in different ways, and there's just no one solution that fits everything. So we recognize that, and we look forward and encourage you to provide suggestions on how your use of the VLab could be enhanced for collaborative purposes. And keeping in mind that what's in there right now in VLab is not what necessarily has to be in there into the future. There are lots of new technologies and new ideas that can be incorporated in. Our backbone LifeRay software is a portal which allows us to aggregate new applications and new content. So we're not pinned down in that regard. So we're really interested in hearing your thoughts about how to enhance the collaborative aspects of the VLab. So with that said, I welcome everyone to enjoy and participate in this meeting, and I'll hand it back over to Greg.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with Ken Sparrow telling us what's new with the VLab since the last meeting. So Ken, I'll go ahead and throw the control over to you, and you are unmuted as well.
Okay, great. Just waiting, okay. All right, so let me go ahead. So first thing I'm going to talk about, and then we'll come back to me I think a little bit later, is the what's new. And so basically I wanted to touch on a couple of things. So what's available now since our last meeting? We've put in place a Wikiloc. This was a request that came in quite some time ago. What it enables within Virtual Lab Collaboration Services is that if a person is editing the wiki and someone else tries to go in and edit that same wiki page, it will basically let them know that the page is locked, and that they then would have to coordinate with the person that's locking it. Once the person that's in the editor for the page exits, either cancels out their edit, saves, or if, for example, they walk away from the page and their session times out, within 2 hours the lock would go away. So, so that's addressing some concerns that were established early on, where some people were, it would allow multiple people to edit at the same time, but the first person to save would save their work, and then the next person to save would be greeted with something saying, oh, someone else has saved since you edited, so which was not an ideal situation. So anyway, that is out there and in place. The second is Redmine portlets, and Mike is going to give a demo on that a little bit later today, so I'll leave it to him to provide details. He's also going to talk about the AWIPS wiki workflow, so that's there. We also have put in place quite a number of NOAA projects registry enhancements, and so those are out there. Some of the things that I think are exciting that are coming and will be coming soon is we have a working example or working implementation of Google Single Sign-On within VLCS. We're doing a phased approach. So the first phase will enable people, if you're working on a computer that has access to Google as well, so that would, the only case that I'm aware of where you typically wouldn't have access to Google from your browser would be if you're working on AWIPS and the AWIPS network. But for all others, if you're there, you're already signed in to Google, it's going to allow you to click on a button, and basically you'll automatically be logged into VLab without having to type in your credentials, which will save everyone time. So that'll be nice. We're waiting on a networking change in IDP so that we can roll that out there, but hopefully that'll be in place within the next week or two, and we can get this thoroughly tested in that environment and make sure that it's rock solid, and then move it out to production. We'll be working on an implementation for Redmine next, so that you can transparently get to Redmine from VLab using the same approach without having to specify credentials or type in your credentials. Another change that's coming is right now when you, if you're subscribed to blogs, you just get an email indicating that a new blog has been posted. With this enhancement, you'll get the content of the blog as well. So that's make it a little bit user-friendly, or more user-friendly. There's a change that was requested where people wanted a basic field where when you store information regarding your profile, this is a reminder that you can actually update your profile write something about yourself in terms of work-related information, and then be able to search for people with particular expertise and such. They wanted the organization to be able to be stored as well, and so that's a change. It's underway. It's been reviewed by one developer. I'm waiting for one additional developer to review the change, and then we'll get that rolled out. And then we're also making some enhancements to it's the VLCS subscription manager. That's a tool that's available to community owners to be able to subscribe users to the message boards, and we're making some updates there to streamline that because it's far from ideal at this point in time. So those are some of the new developments. I'll hand it back. Are there any questions for me before we hand it back?
Well, Ken, we won't hand it back because you're on the agenda.
Okay, you want me to cover the next one too?
Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. Okay. So
okay.
So I'll address any questions, I guess, at the end. So this is one of the items we wanted to talk about a little bit more in depth today, and that is there's a proposal out there to use VLab in combination with GitHub.com. Actually, I think Maya Hansen, she's on the call today, and she's been the one spearheading this effort. And it's trying to establish a policy at the NOAA level that allows the use of GitHub.com. How VLab plays into this is VLab is a trusted source in terms of today it's on NOAA's hardware, so it's a trusted, secure hosting facility. And so one of the requirements is that you have to have these repositories, if they're pushed out to GitHub.com or some other public repository, it has to be hosted on one of NOAA's public sites as well. So GitHub could, VLab could serve that purpose. It also could be a safe place to store the content. So so Maya's doing a heavy lifting with regard to this, but she's trying to work with NOAA CIO's office to establish the policy. One thing of interest is that this has been going on for a couple months now, and in that point in time, DSC, the Department of Commerce, has established a policy early this month that allows for use of GitHub.com from them. So the main use case here is, VLab is great for projects that are exclusively used within NOAA, but GitHub.com scales very well and is open to anyone. And so for projects that don't have sensitive information within them, it's a reasonable and perfect fit to use GitHub.com's infrastructure to collaborate with users and be able to go through, get collaboration in terms of feedback on code, have other people within universities, other government agencies, and such contribute to your project in more of an open source way. And then that project, which is stored in Git, of course, through GitHub.com, could then be populated and be pushed. Those changes could be pushed back to VLab for a sanctioned repository. So that's kind of the first and primary use case for it. There is a desire from some to be able to use GitHub.com for more private repositories. So I should say that just as background, GitHub.com for public open projects is free, but when you start talking about private projects, then it does cost some money. And for those type of projects, there again is a use case where your members may not just be NOAA users, and so in those sorts of circumstances, you'd want to use the infrastructure that GitHub.com provides because of our restriction within VLab that people be NOAA users, so, or have no LDAP credentials. So that's kind of an overview of it. I'm sure if there are questions with Maya being on the call too, between the two of us, we could answer any of those. So that's what I wanted to talk about.
Steve,
so I guess if anyone has questions, you can click on that raise your hand feature.
Unmute her.
So, Maya, we've got you unmuted right now. Is there anything you wanted to add to what Ken said?
No, I think Ken covered it really well. The one thing I would just like to remind everyone on the call about is that current NOAA policy does override Department of Commerce policy on GitHub.com, and as of right now, there is no employees are not allowed to use GitHub.com. So what we're hoping to do is, through this collaboration with VLab, put in place a structure that allows for a little bit more security and opens up that as another code sharing mechanism for people to use. So we're optimistic that that will happen soon. But as of right now, it's still not something that NOAA sanctions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Teresa Amar had a question. What is the URL for the DOC policy?
Okay, so we had a question. What is the URL for the DOC policy? Maya or Ken, do you have that?
I
yeah,
have it
Ken,
in
you might
email,
be able to
yeah.
pull it up.
Yeah, let me see if I
It's
can
actually somewhat ironically, they have it hosted on their GitHub.com site. So if you go to GitHub.com and find the Department of Commerce user, which I think is, no, actually I was going to say I think it's DOC, but I think it's something like U.S. Commerce or the like. But on their GitHub.com page, they actually have a repository that includes guidelines and policies, and so they have their policy posted up there. And we are using that policy to inform the draft NOAA policy.
So I think this is a policy you're referring to. Yeah. So I can make this available, or we can send it out with the notes on the call today.
Okay, so thanks a lot, both Maya and Ken. We do have a question for Ken again, kind of rewinding back on the agenda. Were you planning to go over the What's New page for today's meeting?
I hadn't, but I can very quickly, sure.
Okay.
Let me do that. Okay, so it's going to be on right there at the end, what's new, and when you get there, it basically, as Steve Smith indicated earlier, we have, let me actually turn off this so it looks a little bit more like normal people see. You can see that I've subscribed to all three of these different portlets here. It's new science documents, new communities, and new development service projects, and so within each of these, if you don't want to get emails, it sends an email a day, basically with a summary of any new communities. They're independent emails, but for the new communities and new development service projects, or you can just come in here and go to this page and peruse it and see what's been created. So it just goes through, it's a reverse chronological, so the most recent at the top. You can see that there was a new community for higher-ups within the Weather Service created yesterday. And then there's, I'm amazed at how many new communities and projects are being created. But so I didn't do a summary of that, but I can for the next meeting if desired. That would outline all of them. But I recommend if you want to kind of stay attuned in terms of what's happening, you can go in and just click on the subscribe at the top of each of these, and then you'll just get a quick summary each day that a new community or project gets created. And so anyway, that's as simple as it is.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken. So
Sure.
let me go ahead and take back the screen here so I can show where we are on the agenda. So next we're going to hear from Mike Giebler, who's going to give us a demo of the Redmine portlet and the wiki workflow. So Mike, you're unmuted, and I'm going to make you the presenter right now.
Okay. Give me just a second here to hide some stuff. Okay. Okay, so I'm starting with the Redmine portlet that Ken had mentioned a second ago. We've got this deployed out in production now, and actually on the main VLab page under the Development Services tab, we've deployed this out. And if I scroll down just a little bit, you can see what it looks like. What we've done is kind of created an outline format, kind of a tree view, so you can see the sub-projects under each of the projects. And we have a little bit of a toggle feature to be able to close those. And by default, if you first put this on your page, all projects show up in here. A little bit later, I'll show you how you can configure this to just specify a top-level project and just show that project and its sub-projects on your page. But with all these showing, you can see that it will scroll down for a while. But we do have a search box up here to help with that. If you just start typing in, it'll automatically filter. Starting to type in water, and you can see that like these top two don't say water, but its sub-project has water in the title, so it retains that hierarchy for you, so you can see that result plus its parent projects that way. Over on the right, well, first of all, if you hover over the project name, you'll get a pop-up, and that gives you a description of the project as the description is shows in Redmine. And then there's two icons on the right. This first one here is an external link icon. If you click on that, it will take you to that Redmine project. And I had forgot to log in ahead of time. Sorry for that. So it takes me right to the main page of that project, the overview page. And you can see that these other projects below it, there's, instead of the external link icon, there's this little lock icon. And that signifies that that project has been flagged as private within Redmine. So we don't give you the option to actually link there. You can click on it, but it doesn't take you anywhere. And just to show you how that's configured, I'll show you on this AWIPS 2 page that I was on in the settings. We have this public flag. So if that's checked, it'll give you a link because we felt that if they're private, if you click on a link, you're just going to get you don't have access to this project kind of an error. The other icon is contacts. It's a little person there. If you click on that, what it does is it gives you a list of the project managers for this project, and then those are mail to hyperlinks. So if you have your if you have that configured to work with your browser, you click on that and it'll take you to where you can email that person. There's also a second view. Hold on here. This table view, and that just presents it a little bit differently. It's hard to really graphically represent the hierarchical format of the projects with the sub-projects when you're in the table view. So it doesn't, but it does show the project description. It's just another way of looking at those projects. I like the hierarchical view better. I wanted to switch over to our VLab support team page, and we've actually deployed this and configured it to just show the VLab as the top project and then show all the sub-projects under there, and I'll show you how that's configured. Okay, so here it is on our community page, and you can see it just starts at the virtual lab as the top level project, shows all the sub-projects that are under there. And to configure that, we have the gear icon for the portlet, and we have it set under preferences. And there's just one field to enter here, and that is the identifier for that project. And so the project key is VLab here. And quickly I'll show you where you find that. I'm not on the VLab project here, but it'll be in the same spot. This is the AWIPS2 development. But it's this identifier field right here. That's what you type into that field for configuration. And if you really wanted to, you can put multiple portlets on the page and configure that top level project for each of the portlets. You can show a second project as a top level project and the sub projects under that if you wanted to put multiple ones on your page here. So I think that covers most of the Redmine portlet. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. I don't know if anybody had any questions on it.
So Mike, we did have a question. How is this updated? Is it automatic when a new project comes in, or you have to go in and do it?
So it kind of. So it is using Redmine web services to go out and retrieve the data, and it's live data. But we did find that the web services rendering was kind of slow, so we've actually put in caching to speed that up. So it will refresh. I think it will be daily, but I'm not positive. But when that cache period timeout hits, it'll refresh those projects. So it's not real time, but it's close to real time.
Okay, any more questions for Mike on the Redmine portlet before he goes to his next topic?
Unmute Steve.
We got a question here from Steve. Steve, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Steve Smith, you are unmuted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the importance of this from a NOAA standpoint. This is the kind of transparency that we've never seen before in terms of what's going on in actual development in NOAA. So we're really like opening up the doors and letting people look in to see what real projects are being executed with real appropriated funds, et cetera, and for the first time letting people see that, explore, and get a better understanding. So part of one of the driving sort of mission goals of the VLab is transparency. It's been very hard to do this in an automated way, and Mike has finally come up with this solution. So I really encourage people when they get a chance to sort of look in here to get a better sense of the amount of work. I find it absolutely amazing the breadth and depth of the development that goes on in NOAA, and so you can see it right here, and it's going to grow. It just continues to grow. More and more people are managing their code in this sort of distributed Git world, and so this is a big beginning, but it's nowhere near the end. So I just want to put that into context. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Mike, you want to go ahead and
hold on. Oh. Ken Johnson raised his hand.
Hang on. We're going to go ahead and unmute
Ken Johnson.
Yeah. Ken Johnson, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. In the context of what Steve just said, I'm not a developer. Been a long time since I've written code. I dabble over on the collaborative side of VLab somewhat. So if I wanted to exercise that transparency that Steve talked about and take a look at what's going on over on the development side, is there a cheat sheet or a 101 document that I can look at that would tell me how to do that?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. So how to navigate through the Redmine projects, or?
How do I see what projects are written? Steve just said there's a way of looking at the development projects that are going on, opening up this transparency. So how do I find out what's being developed over there?
Yeah. So can I be heard?
Yeah, we can hear you, Steve.
Yeah. So Ken, what Mike is showing here, and you can still see it on the screen. The list of the names of those things. Yeah, Mike's scrolling. These are the projects. This is it. The names here, and in this view, they're grouped hierarchically. So I think I didn't butcher that too badly. So you can see, for example, the AWIPS2 high level. Everything under that are AWIPS2 sub projects. And so you can see hazard services, image tools, national data sets, boundary drawing tool. All of these represent sub-projects under the AWIPS2 development. So, and as you go on down the line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, those are the actual projects that are hosted in the VLab Redmine site. If you put on the table view, it lists it in that tabular form, and then you can look at it in that fashion. But that's basically, that's the real stuff. There's nothing else.
Okay.
Put on the table view for a second, Mike, if you would. So one of the things you can, up there at the top, it's like 10 entries. You can change that to whatever, 50 or 75, I think is the max. That's another way if you, actually 100. Okay, so if you put that, then it'll load up 100 projects in the table view, and you could just scroll on down to examine all of those. You good, Ken?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay. So Mike, why don't you go ahead and we can talk about wiki workflow now.
Okay, I'm going to a different community here, a test community that have kind of had this partly set up. I'm going to walk through the configuration and things on this wiki workflow. But what we've are trying to accomplish with this is there are some workflow setups that Liferay allows where you can do, well, let me first give you an example of the document library. You can do a specific workflow on specific document library folders, but in the but for wikis, it's kind of an all or nothing concept that they had set up. If you set up a wiki, or I mean a workflow for a wiki in your community, that workflow applies to all wikis within the community. So here I've navigated to the content. I'm on the wiki portion, and you can see that we have, in this test community, we have several wikis. And if we were to apply a workflow to one of these, that workflow gets applied to all of these. So we're trying to come up with a way to make more of a fine-grained workflow where you can apply a workflow to just a specific wiki. And we don't specifically do that, but we kind of come up with a workaround to do this. And what it does is we assign the workflow to all wikis, but we have this auto approve feature built into the workflow, so that by default, all of these wikis will get auto approved, even though they have the workflow attached to them. But what you do is we have a custom field attached to the wikis, and if you set that to a particular value, that particular wiki node will have that go through an approval process for the wiki. Let me give you just a quick show here. I've added this to the user's guide. And it's a little bit of an overview here. And this hopefully will give you a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. So there's first step, this is have a number 2 next to it. That goes to look to see if the value is set on that custom field. And if it is, it goes through this wiki review process where you can have multiple iterations of, no, I don't like the way this wiki looks, so you reject it. The author has a chance to make updates to it and resubmit it for approval again, and then finally it can get approved. If that value is not set in that custom field, it goes through this auto approve route, and this step here does not require any manual intervention. It does the switching of the workflow status automatically, and then sends it on to this approved state. The rest of this user guide shows how to set up and configure that, and I'm just going to walk through those steps real quick so you can kind of see how that works. Okay. So first of all, on the custom field, wanted to let you know that you do have to have a specific role to be able to modify that, and that is set by the VLab support team. So you'd have to put in a request to be added to that role, and that was because that's the only way we can get this to work. For the approval step, that is a community level role. So once you have that set up, you can add whoever you want to that community level role for the approval step process. Okay, so what I want to do is in this community, I'm going to go to the community memberships and assign that role to myself. So it's add community roles to user. And here it is, it's the community wiki reviewer role here. Okay, so now once the workflow is configured, when somebody makes an edit to that wiki, I'll be the approver for that approval step for the wiki workflow. Still here in the configuration administration section for the site, going to the configuration tab, there's a workflow configuration option over here. I think it's the last one in the list here. There it is. It's wiki with auto approve option. Okay, so now that workflow is attached to all wiki nodes or all wiki articles right now. But by default, they're all going to go through that auto approve route. So the next step I'm going to do is show you how to set up a particular wiki node to actually go through an approval step. So I've put a wiki portlet on this page, and I've actually added two of the wiki nodes on here, this demo workflow one and this test 2 wiki one, just so that I can demonstrate the two different scenarios, one where one goes through workflow and one is auto approved. All right, so on the demo workflow, I'm going to attach, make it so that one has to go through a review step. And to do that, you need to go to the edit the wiki page. And I need to emphasize this. This needs to be at the front page because that's the page that it looks for the value on this. And then it will cascade to any child pages that get added to this. So if this page has a workflow, all of the child pages will have to go through that review step as well. So I'll just put some text in here. And then what you need to change is this VLCS assignee role. By default, it's set to none for auto approve, and it's a drop down. So, and there's only one other value right now. And community reviewer, a community wiki reviewer is the value we'll put to that. And then since workflow is attached, the wording on this button now submit for publication. Okay, so now since they, at this initial step, since the approval step wasn't attached to it yet, it automatically, those changes do automatically get in here this first time, but subsequent changes are going to require the approval step. And I'll just do that real quick. Go to edit again. and submit this for publication. And I'll hit refresh. And you can see that the change didn't take. I added just edited on here, and right now it doesn't show up. But what's happened is here I've got a notification since I'm in the that approval role that there's something in my queue to approve. So I can go into here and assign this to me. And now that it's assigned to me, I can decide to approve or reject it. I'll go ahead and approve that. Okay. Okay, now when I hit the refresh, that change shows up now after going through that that approval step. And this other one doesn't have the that value set. So if I go ahead and edit it, it should automatically the edit should show up right away. And there it is. So that is what we have set up right now on this. It's a single approval with an auto approve option. So that way we can have kind of work this out so that some wikis have to go through an approval step while other wiki pages don't need to within your community. And maybe I can show just one more quick demo, and that'll be all I want to show on this, and that is this will cascade down to any child pages that you may add. And hit refresh, and you still don't see that child page showing up. But I do have another notification up here that there's something waiting in my queue to be approved. And I'll just walk through this real quick. And now that I've approved it, that child page shows up down below. So, and then any edits to that will go through that workflow process as well, with that approval step being required. So that's a quick overview of that wiki workflow process. I don't know if anybody had any questions.
Any questions for Mike?
Let's see.
While we have Mike on, I just want to mention the fast fact that Mike was instrumental in developing, and that is in the past, whenever you were given a link to a restricted community, if you weren't a member, that link would just send you to an error. Now it'll prompt you to join that community or request membership. So that's a really nice addition for the VLab, and thanks, Mike, for putting that in there. So. All right, Mike, we're going to go ahead and now switch gears, and we'll talk with Eric Rasmussen. He works for SIMS and NSSL here in Norman, and he's going to talk about the Vortex Southeast community in the VLab. And Eric, you are unmuted, and I'm going to make you the presenter right now. And you should be good to go. Oh, Eric, you are self-muted, so if you can unmute yourself. We see your screen, but we don't hear you.
Okay, now you hear me.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Eric.
I should be self-muted more often, probably. All right. I put together a few PowerPoint slides to talk about the Vortex Southeast. Oops. Get this off of my screen. So Vortex Southeast is a new experiment in the last year or so, directed by Congress to look at tornado issues in the Southeast U.S. that are unique to the Southeast U.S. And I'm the project manager for that. I work here at Sims in Norman. So Vortex Southeast has some pretty special planning circumstances that kind of necessitated the use of the VLab, and I want to mention those here. One is that it's a multidiscipline program, heavily involving the social sciences, physical sciences, and operations, and really a honest, dedicated attempt to try to get all of those working together and talking with each other. So there's a lot of issues there. These different groups use different languages. They have different approaches to research and different ways of testing ideas, different problem-solving approaches. So that's one thing we wanted to try to integrate using the virtual lab. We also involve a lot of different organizations and basically different cultures. NOAA and the National Science Foundation and NASA are all part of the executive committee that directs this experiment, and with time probably will be funding various Vortex Southeast activities. We have a lot of universities involved, maybe 20 or 25. And for those of you who interact with university researchers, you understand that that's a very individualistic culture, because especially the young researchers have to be very cognizant of how much they publish, how many grants they have, and all of this. And that in very obvious ways makes it difficult for university researchers to share their ideas with others. In a broad sense, they'll share ideas and perspectives, but when it comes to their really golden nuggets that they want to build their career on, there's no way they'll disclose those. NOAA Labs and NCAR are both involved. We have different ways of doing business. The Weather Service is heavily involved in providing guidance on what is needed operationally and whether the research is going to be useful and how it could be brought into operations. And we have private sector representatives. Another interesting aspect of Vortex Southeast is our funding is completely unpredictable. It relies on a special congressional appropriation every year, and so we're trying to plan activities that really can't be accomplished in 1 year. A lot of these research foci take 3 to 5 years to gain useful new knowledge, but we don't know if next year there'll be funding. So that makes the planning pretty interesting. So what we needed was a virtual workshop. We started this off because we had a face-to-face workshop in Huntsville, Alabama last fall in November, and we realized early on that, for one, our short workshop in Huntsville wasn't going to be nearly long enough to cover the conversations that needed to be held. We had to get information out to the attendees, and then following the workshop, we needed to keep the conversation going. So the idea was a virtual workshop. Our planning is continual because it sort of has to be, because we never know when the funding's going to arrive. We never know which agency is going to have the funding. We never know when there's going to be new science or new technology we can apply to the science. So we try to keep a science plan going continually, update that a couple of times a year at least. So we needed a way to share our various perspectives on the science and operations. We needed to be able to discuss research problems, hypotheses, more broadly conceptual frameworks. It's just a way of thinking about how you obtain new scientific knowledge and how to integrate and communicate between disciplines. And that's a huge challenge face-to-face, and I think even a bigger challenge in the virtual world. Share preliminary findings so we have something to build the research off of, get feedback for our evolving science plan, and just basically converse without having to sit down and spend the money to travel and sit down face-to-face a couple of times a year. Now, this is embarrassing. I haven't spent near as much time as I'd like to looking at what all VLab can do for us. So a lot of the things I'm going to say here in the next few minutes, you'll be sitting there saying, well, wait, you can do that. That's easy. And it's just because I'm stupid and I haven't become educated on this yet. So that's the first disclaimer. And I'm usually putting fires out because somebody wants a report this afternoon that will take 2 weeks to write. So I would like to have the time to sit down and contemplate and be creative and figure out how to best use VLab, but so far that hasn't happened. And then finally, these cultural aspects I just mentioned on the previous slide. Learning how to collaborate across disciplines and communicate is a challenge, and learning how to do that virtually is even bigger. So I haven't figured this thing out yet, and so I'm happy to be able to sit down and discuss it with you today. Okay, so I want to just show you what we've got going in this Vortex Southeast virtual workshop on the virtual lab. This is what a person sees when they first hit the front page of our VLab. They see the list of the most recent contributions, either in the forums or in the blogs. So that's one way. If you happen to be a person who, you know, when you get to work in the morning, after you've filled your coffee cup, you say, gosh, I want to know what's going on in the Vortex Southeast virtual workshop. This is one way to do that. We don't have any users like that, unfortunately, as far as I know. But other things that are available in our VLab or that we use are the forums and the blogs. We also have a documents repository that's not used very well yet. We haven't started to use wikis at all. We just haven't really found the need. So if you go to the blogs tab, you'll see a set of categories of blogs here, a collection of all of them, and then some from the steering committee, pertaining to the steering committee, some where I'm just opining and so on and so forth. But I'm not sure what the regular user sees versus what I see. Mainly what I see is this stuff, these controls here. But if we go to a recent blog entity such as this reflections one, this is what it looks like. So in my opinion, you know, the mechanics here are pretty prominent. The content is sort of subdued. It's a pretty good way for me to put down words on paper, but when I look at this page, nothing really grabs me as a reader saying, wow, this looks like it's going to be an interesting blog post. Now I know there's people out there that just dwell on the thoughts of Eric, and so they're going to read every word, but I wish I had a way, and there probably are a lot of ways, to make this reach out and grab the member of this virtual workshop. The other tab we use a lot is the forums, and again, you can see here that we've had a pretty tremendous amount of activity in the last year. What does it look like? We have about 160 users, and there's about 160 threads, it looks like. Most of them, I have to admit, I started, but there were a lot of contributions and posts to those threads. When you hit this forums page, you know, again, you're looking mainly controls, and if you look at this and try to find the content you're interested in, it's not going to really, in my opinion, it doesn't really jump out at you. But one thing we did achieve here is I moved a whole bunch of stuff over into an archived category, which is stuff now that's not so hot, but is interesting for for future reference. So it's kind of shoved back out of the way, and I think that was, in the forums, this threading and the categories in threading are incredibly useful compared to other venues like Google Groups where you really can't thread down like this. But how do users know what's in here without really digging category by category and thread by thread through the whole workshop? It would be nice if there was some way that an average user could say, I'd like an overview of this whole thing and see what's interesting to me. So we can drill down into the research problems. Let me pop back for a second. So over in the archived category, if you hit research problems, you go to this one. If you hit the physical sciences, you go to this one over here on the right. You can still drill down further to any of these physical sciences categories. This is where we try to elicit the scientific, opinions of all the scientists in this virtual workshop on what the current, important, relevant, unanswered questions are, so that we could develop a science plan. So that's what this was all about. So you can go here to any of these physical sciences categories like NWP, and now you can finally we're down to the actual thread level, and you can see the particular threads that people were having a discussion on. So again, the categories and threading I think is essential and a very nice capability. in the VLab. But finding my way around without really digging through and without knowing in advance what the relevant search terms are I should be searching for and that sort of thing, I haven't found the way to do that myself. Documents, we don't, this is sort of a repository for stuff that's linked to elsewhere. It would be nice if it were more like a public library where you walked in and you saw, wow, I think I'll do some reading on risk perception in tornado warnings in the southeast U.S. And I walk over to that shelf in the library and find some really interesting books to sit down and peruse. I don't know how to make the documents part of the VLab any friendlier in terms of kind of just giving me a place to nose around. So anyway, wish list on behalf of myself and the users in the virtual Vortex Southeast virtual workshop. I bet this is something that's available and I just don't know how to do, but I wish I had subscribed to all, to every forum posting and to every blog so that I got an email every time something happened. And then if it was something that I was yawning about and didn't really want to pay attention to any further, then just write in that email I could unsubscribe to that. That would be pretty cool. It's probably out there and I just don't know how to do it. Or just a GUI presented to the user that with a few clicks allows them to set up their subscriptions in that way instead of going to each individual item in the VLab and deciding whether to subscribe or unsubscribe. Something I just need to learn how to do and be able to teach my other members of this workshop how to do. I want to know how users are interacting. I want to know, I've had users make comments, like, it's clunky, it doesn't really facilitate conversation. I would like to know how people are using the VLab and maybe the virtual workshop and maybe get a sense of how I could make it work better for them, because really it's the only tool of its sort that's available to us in this NOAA project, and I would like to get to a point where it really is a place where people go just to converse about science instead of going there when Eric says, hey, there's something new you really need to pay attention to. The editor, boy, I tell you, it just gives me fits. The font formatting seems to jump. It's hard for me to get the font looking the way I like it. I would like to be able to drag graphics and pictures in off my desktop instead of having to drag them to a place to store them and then link to that spot. I just drag it into the editor and let the editor manage all that for me. Same way with documents. Continuing on, how to get, but there's a user's guide. I have skimmed it. I haven't really studied it. I wonder what the average user who isn't a geek, and again, considering all the cultures and the way we think so differently across these disciplines and the way we interact with social media differently, the way we interact with our computers differently, how does my typical Vortex Southeast user learn how to use the virtual workshop? Because I think if I were able to go out and canvas them, I think most of them would have abilities in the VLab that are just about as primitive and undeveloped as mine. One of the things I do all the time is code, mostly because I just enjoy the heck out of it. But you've all seen Doxygen documentation, and I can't remember the graphics piece that develops diagrams like this, but the top part up here is an inheritance diagram. So this would basically be category thread, and if you click on any one of them, then you'll see how what inherits in and what it's hooked to above it. And then the bottom part, of course, is what we call a collaboration diagram. It would be so cool if every forum post and every blog post could have links or show a diagram like this of what it links to, so I could just at a glance say, whoa, that looks like something interesting I haven't looked at, and I would click on it because it's a link, and it would take me to that item. Anyway, I don't know if anything like this is even conceivable or whether it's out already, but to my geekish way of thinking, it would be cool. And if you would ask one of my social sciences people what they'd like to see, they'd say, oh, you've got to be kidding me. That's crazy. So who knows? We've got a real big diversity of users. Anyway, to boil it all down, how the heck do we converse? How do we make this virtual workshop an ongoing conversation instead of a place where people go when you tell them they need to do a little work. Ah, that's it. Let me pop out of this.
Oh, that's good stuff, Eric. I kind of purposely put you toward the end of the agenda, kind of butted up against the roundtable discussion because I anticipated that you would probably generate some topics for the roundtable with your presentation. So at this point, we open it up to the floor. First of all, if anybody has any specific questions or comments for Eric, we can start with those, and then we'll just see where the conversation takes us if we even have a conversation. So so we're going to go ahead, and we got our first question. I'm going to, is it Steve?
Yes.
Okay, Steve Smith, and then after Steve, we've got Ken Johnson, his hand up. So I'm actually unmuting both Steve and Ken, but let's start with Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, and Eric. Thanks for this, for sharing your well-considered thoughts on this, and thanks for jumping in with both feet and arms and legs and to test drive the VLab for your very important field experiment. So I think you've really touched on a lot of issues which are core to this broad category of collaboration, and so in particular. One thing we've emphasized with the VLab is that the first thing you need for collaboration is real people who want to collaborate, right? And so sometimes we have the sort of scenario where somebody says, well, I'll create this community and then everybody's going to flock to it and love it and et cetera, and that generally doesn't work too well. So, but you started out on the right foot. You had a project, you had people, you had money, and then you said, okay, we need to do some virtual things. So you dove into the VLab and tried something, and so that's what we're really looking for: people to explore, find the limitations, find the things that don't work, find the things that could be so much better, etc. So that's really great, and I appreciate your patience with in that regard and trying things out. I completely agree that there's just this elixir of getting people to sort of like want to go someplace and want to collaborate. That's really the holy grail, and it's I feel like there's ways we can enhance that, as you pointed out. I was introduced to this concept of nudging, so where you've got like some basic kind of collaboration framework, but it's not quite there. But if you tweak this, you enable that, and then all of a sudden you by magic it happens. So your suggestions, the whole group of them, I think any number of them could greatly enhance the usability. I'll ask Ken Sparrow maybe or Mike Ebler to maybe address some of your specifics about whether things can be done now. But I just want to thank you and keep in mind that through the VLab improvement team primarily, or just keeping in touch with us in general, if you have or anyone has some sort of new application that they've spotted that could be highly valuable, or you perceive it is that we might try out for a spin or something, then by all means bring it to our attention, and we can try to even in a developmental mode enable it for a community or something to see if it'll work. But that idea of having the virtual world and real people sort of like in a virtual space, but interacting, that's really a tough one. So, but anyway, thank you.
Thanks.
Ken, you have your hand up. You want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank Eric. Eric, this is Ken Johnson, Eastern Region. I want to thank you for both this presentation and the points you raise in trying to use VLab. This isn't necessarily the first time we've heard comments like yours. It may be the first time we've heard them so well put. So thank you for the presentation. Now, my challenge, actually, I'll issue a challenge. I don't know if I have the right to do that, but I'll try anyway. Issue a challenge to the VLab support team down there. I'd like to know how many of these suggestions that Eric just presented to us, how many of those can actually be worked on? Can we work on those? Because they're really great suggestions. They're suggestions that have been made by other presenters. Steve, I'm afraid I don't subscribe to the nudging theory. You know, we've been trying to nudge for some time. I've been trying to nudge Sue's, you know, even my own staff. They're just not flocking to VLab like we think they should to take advantage of what's there. So I think a different approach is needed. I think suggestions that Eric made would be a big step in the right direction to getting people to use and be interested and really make use of the potential here. But, you know, we need to take advantage of comments like Eric's to make this work. And so my challenge to you all is, how do we do that? What can you implement that he suggested? And if we can't, what's stopping us from doing it? I guess I'll just end there.
Well, let me, Ken, thanks. Let me just say that I believe in an earlier, John Chattel, I think, interacted with Eric at one point earlier. But the main vehicle we have now for adjudicating this type of good feedback is through the VLab improvement team, which is chaired by John Ice. And so I'll make sure that we scrape Eric's presentation for this content and in the form of some way that the VLab improvement team can take it on and prioritize it along with the other things that they're already looking at. But I believe that all of us really are looking for ways to better create a more attractive and valuable collaboration space. And it may be advisable to kind of set up, as I said, like a pilot project where we try some new applications, or we do something sort of out of the ordinary in a test mode that could then be piloted, if you will, for Eric or some other group, and see if a focused sort of thing. So to sort of try to get it like they would like, and evaluate to see if we've hit the mark or not. So that might be the best approach, is to do some sort of a collaboration pilot study, if you will, based on Eric and others' suggestions.
Hey, Greg, this is Greg. Am I unmuted? Greg?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. For some reason, I can't make the go to webinar show up, so I don't know what's muted and what's not. Oh, it's probably my own dumb fault here. But I have to say, this is the first the VLab improvement team has heard of these things I'm throwing out today, and that's my fault. I just haven't had a chance to really even collect my thoughts until Greg asked me to do this. So, kudos to everybody who works on VLab, because it has helped us a lot, and I look forward to the changes that might happen in the future.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm still here, Ken.
Yeah, okay. My improvement team rep just walked in the room, so I will give him an assignment, and we'll see what happens.
Okay. Ken or Mike, did you guys want to respond to some of the specifics, if you could, if you're able, I should say?
Yeah, this is Ken. So there's some unique and very interesting ideas. I think potentially like the collaboration diagram, I'd never thought of that before. So that's something we need to look into. Some of the stuff we heard regarding like unsubscribing and subscription, subscribe all, it's not the first time, and we have those on our plate in terms of that's one of the things I mentioned early on is subscription manager updates. Those hopefully will address at least a subset of what you've suggested. The one thing that I saw in there that I've thought of too, but it's we haven't addressed it yet or don't have it on our in the plans is unsubscribing via email. But that's something that we can definitely add and look at how easy or difficult it would be to do that through email. I would think it would be doable. In terms of ways to navigate and organize your information, one of the things I would suggest that you might want to look into is that, especially with documents and even with forums and forum posts and such, if people use tags or categories, there are tags and category navigation portlets available that you can put on a page. And so one of the things is like a tag cloud that if people are tagging things, you can see what's popular or what's and just by the size of the tags themselves. And so that might be a way of getting to the information in different ways. The other thing that we've done in other areas which might be beneficial within your community is using the asset publisher and using the number of views as a means for popularity. Or I don't think I saw it, but you can also turn on the ratings within your community for the particular different asset types, whether that's or forum posts or documents. Those are the two primarily that you're using. And then be able to see the content organized in that fashion. So those are just some of the initial ideas I had in watching your presentation. But you have some good ideas and a unique perspective, and I'll be interested in taking that feedback as has been suggested, and then having the VLab improvement team prioritize that so that we can sit down and see what we can do to get fixes and enhancements out to you all.
Thanks, Ken. This is Eric again. I have never messed with the tags and the categories and the navigation board that you mentioned. That sounds like something that might be useful right off. So I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, let us know. So that's one thing that I think has a lot of potential. It could be very powerful in exposing information to your users. So.
All right, great discussion. Any other comments from any of the other attendees on Eric's topics or anything else, VLab? It looks like we're not getting any hands, so we'll go ahead and we'll wrap things up. I want to mention that this, as with the other owners meetings, we've recorded the presentation. I will be getting it posted to YouTube probably by sometime tomorrow. And oh, we got a hand up from Bonnie Strong. Let me go ahead and unmute. Bonnie, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to ask really sort of a how do you kind of question. I know in the past I have seen somewhere, and I thought maybe it was the projects registry, where it had transition plans included, and I cannot find those anymore. Did anybody point me toward that?
So you're talking about the NOAA projects registry?
That's where I thought I was, but I won't swear. You know, I was browsing somewhere, I'm pretty sure on the community side, as opposed to the development side.
Yeah, the projects registry does contain, that's one of the fields that's collected on those projects, and so that probably is where you saw it. So if you're looking for a particular project, let me know, and I can see if there's an issue. But
I
yeah,
have
it does.
A quick comment. We did change the interface a little bit. We dropped some of the columns from what we call a summarized view in the projects registry. And that was one of the columns that we dropped to make it easier to look through. But then you can switch to a detailed view, which will have that transition plan field show up there. That might be what you need to do.
I think that's exactly what was happening for me. Thank you. I hadn't even noticed the detailed view.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks everyone. Any other questions before we sign off? Raise your hand and we'll unmute you if you have a question. All right, I'm not seeing any more hands. So we'll go ahead and we'll adjourn. And as I said before, we'll make the video recording available on YouTube within 24 hours. And the VLab improvement team, I've marked down the time around which Eric presented his slide with his suggestions, and I'll send that off to you guys so you can find it pretty quickly. So we'll be meeting again at August 24th, I believe. I'll have to check my calendar. That'll be the next owners meeting. If you have any ideas or if you are an owner that would like to be in the spotlight, please let me know within about a week and a half before that meeting, and I'll get you on the agenda. So thanks to everyone for all the presenters and the attendees. We'll see you in 2 months.